Hello and welcome to the inaugural, yes, the first ever video podcast for a brand new, all new magazine, GoClassics, that's just gone on sale across all major newsagents in the UK, even WH Smith. And you can get it physically and digitally at goclassics.co.uk. I'm Shazad Sheikh, aka the Brown Car Guy. And as well as being a emerging journalist and content creator for over 3 decades, I'm actually also part of the team at GoClassics as a media editor and a columnist. Here is the mag. You can see it there. And that's me in it. Check that out. But we'll talk more about this in a minute. But first, let me introduce you to Jeff Bailey, who is one of the founders and editor at large of GoClassics. He's been involved in cars personally and professionally since forever and has been writing for motoring titles for 20 years. He has a big problem. He suffers from a serious car buying addiction and has owned over 100 cars and counting. He's not completely nuts though, because his favorite car is the Jensen Interceptor, and that's pretty cool. And we have Angie Voluti, the sub-editor and also a columnist on GoClassics. Everyone knows her because she's been involved in the UK car industry for 25 years. She's also a huge Alfa Romeo fan, probably something to do with her Italian heritage. And other interests apart from classic cars is aerial fitness, which I believe is not anything to do with airplanes, but does involve a pole. All I know is that she can be on pole position for this podcast. Welcome, guys. How are you both doing?
Hello.
Exciting times, huh?
Yeah, good
I'm
stuff.
grand. Thank you.
Exciting times. This magazine is launching. It's a new thing. Wow. What about that? How does that feel right now for you guys?
Well, brand new experience for me, that's for sure. I've been a columnist before, but never a sub-editor. And I get to bully people into giving me their copy, and then I can chop and change.
Surely you are used to bullying people anyway without being sub-editor.
Well, I've got more of an excuse.
And Jeff, it's your baby. Wow.
Yeah, well, this was a vision that Alan Anderson, the editor, and I had over a year ago. And what with lockdown, these things tended to take a rather slow route. But having said that, the vision has now turned into reality. And of course, the 5th of August, the magazine is launched. It's in the shops, as you say, and it's also available digitally. So the culmination of a year's solid, hard graft, and the team's pulled together. We've actually got it out there against all the odds, and the results are just fantastic. When you see this magazine on the shelf, it implores you to buy it.
That's amazing. I mean, and if you say 5th of August, and actually as of recording right now, today, you guys will be watching this a bit later on, but we are actually recording this on 5th of August. So, Jeff, I don't know how you're sitting there so calmly and coolly, because you must be really excited today.
Yeah, well, I'm one of those people who sort of internalizes it. But I tell you what, when we finish this, I'm going to crack open a large cider, and I'm going to just jump up and down in my underpants.
I'm glad. Well, I hope you're wearing more than underpants right now. I know we can't see that at the moment, but maybe that's a blessing in disguise. So, Angie, what is this magazine about?
From my point of view, or in general?
Well, what is it? What is the magazine about? For somebody who hasn't seen, this is the cover. But what is it actually about? What is GoClassic? I mean, apart from the obvious that GoClassics, but what is it actually about?
It's the way I look at it. It's a way to connect to an audience that sometimes might have become a little disenchanted with whatever this market at the moment. I'm not quite sure about other markets, but definitely the UK has been offering. I have been in the industry too long. 25 years. I actually rather not remember. It's been 25 years. And all throughout this time, not much has changed. The titles are more or less the same. There's been one or two casualties, but mostly, you got the never-ending autocar. And autocar is what, 110 years old now?
Yeah, that was the original, wasn't it? That's the original magazine, isn't it?
Good tradition. I remember when Octane was launched. So, this is how long back ago. Has anything changed? Not quite. Has the audience changed? Probably. I remember a time when these magazines would have been just for men, not because women may not be interested in it, but because they didn't even know they could be talked to. And then things gradually changed, and people realized that actually half of the buying population is made of women. In fact, more than half, if you think that the husband will listen to what the wife wants when it comes to buying the family car, at least. And therefore, the changes are there, the opportunities are there, but in my view, there was not much to match them. And I think that's the potential I see in this magazine.
I think actually it's a very interesting point that you've hit on there with women being in the influencers. And it's not just half. I think the figure is actually significantly higher. If I recall correctly, it's something like 80% of car buying decisions in households are actually influenced by the woman in the household.
Yes.
Yeah, so it is a very high figure. But Jeff, this magazine, actually tell us a little bit, because you mentioned just there Alan Anderson. And of course, he's not with us in this podcast. So just on his behalf, introduce him a little bit and say what background does he come from and how did you guys get together and decide to do this?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting story, really, because Alan's been an absolute pinnacle of this profession for many years. But he started, like most of us, in in the dim and distant past, when I think he went and bought his first car magazine at the age of 10. And he said, I want to write for one of those. And in fact, funny enough, that's what I did as well. And I remember when I applied dutifully to Autocar when I just got out of uni. And I thought, I've got an English degree, they're going to employ me. No, apparently in those days you had to have a journalism degree. That's how things have changed now. So everything's a bit more basically based upon your ability rather than what you've got in the back room. So Alan has come up the hard way, and he's edited over 25 magazines through the years, and he's hugely respected in the industry. I've seen firsthand a lot of the plaudits that he's received, and in fact, just prior to the launch here, we've been obviously talking to a lot of our industry people who move and shake, and they've basically all came back and they've said, we love this, and we would say if we didn't. And even the high street shops buyers have said that this is definitely got a very very new flavour, a very sort of modern flavour, basically a modern twist on an old hobby.
And what was Alan doing before this magazine? I mean, there was something else that he was working on, and was that the inspiration to do this?
It was, because the magazine that he was editing for a good 17 years, the publishers pulled the plug on it as soon as COVID struck. It was making a profit, but probably it was just too small for them to fiddle about with, so they decided to close the title. And that's basically how Alan and I got together. I've got a background in not only in writing, but I run businesses too. So the whole thing has to run smoothly as a business. And between us, we've managed to pull it off. And you see the results of this now on the newsstands, which is fantastic.
Angie, is this just about old cars? Is that all that this magazine is about then?
Well, I hope not. I think it's about cars with a soul, or maybe cars which have a soul, according to at least some people. Because liking a car.
But you know what? Define that. Yes. What is a car with a soul?
It's a car that talks to you. A car that says, "Come and drive me, and I will never let you down." That doesn't mean let you down physically.
I was going to say that, talking about Italian cars in this context, that's probably not the right choice.
No, but not let you down in terms of you will never become disenchanted or be bored with me. That's what the car says. And in that, it will be eternal. And as it is eternal, it'll be a classic. I think that's what it is.
That's pretty awesome. So we're not talking old cars necessarily, because there's a big move towards what some people call young timers. I prefer the term modern classics. Yes. And I think that this, because to me, I do think that classic cars, if you like, call them what you want to, but as car people, we kind of relate to the cars mostly that we identify with it within our lifetime, right?
You're talking
So
posters
that's
here,
why,
aren't you?
go on.
You're talking about posters in your bedroom when you were a teenager.
Exactly.
Yes, but also modern classics are a good way to get into a younger audience as well.
Mhm.
And when I say younger, I mean, late 30s, 40s, late 40s, because 10, 20 years ago, the audience that we as PR professionals would have been asked to target would have been in the late 50s. So things have changed, and the access and the charm of these cars has broadened. And
that brings us nicely to a question for you, Jeff. Probably something that you and Alan, I imagine, have spent many, many hours agonizing over. Who is the magazine actually aimed at?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and one I can answer. The magazine, our initial ethos here was basically to bring the age range down, as Angie's rightly pointed out. And you're not going to do that overnight, because the median demographic for classic car magazines is 45 to 65. And of course, everyone sitting here falls within that demographic. But, sorry.
I told you not to bring that up.
And so obviously we understand that demographic completely, but also we've all got kids, we've all got people who are younger, who perhaps haven't been brought up with the sort of cars that the older demographic had when they were kids. And so even certain cars that I would absolutely take for granted in the 80s, a lot of younger people don't even know what they are. You mentioned a Renault 5 GT Turbo, and it's like, what? So actually, there's what we're trying to do is to enable the younger generation, or a younger generation, to indulge their hobby. And because when you look at the various annual studies that are done on the classic car industry, it's enormous, absolutely enormous. And there's still a huge amount of interest, even with this green lobby and the electrification drive. There's still a massive interest here. So really, what we're trying to do with this magazine is to make it easier to dip into. And one of the things that we absolutely insisted on was making it bite size. You don't really want to see absolute walls of text, which put people off of even starting to read. There's lots of subheadings and lots of gaps between the paragraphs. And that's not just to dumb it down, but it's just making it easier to digest.
Making it more accessible in digital age, right? I'm going to come back to that, but it's interesting, a couple of things that you touched on there, because I'm looking in this incredible magazine called GoClassics, which I think I find it quite useful, since I only got my copy yesterday and I've been perusing through it. And right here at the beginning in this first section, it says COVID can't kill off classics, and I found that quite interesting. And some of the figures in here were very interesting. The UK has around 3 million classic and historical vehicles with value exceeding £12 billion.
Yeah.
And where did this figure come from? A staggering 4.6 million people in Britain would dearly love to own a classic. That's extraordinary.
Well, that is extraordinary, and that was my exact point. A lot of people, even the ones I come across on a daily basis, say, I'd love to have one of those, and I would really like to do it, but I don't know how. It worries me about costs. Do they break down? Blah, blah, blah. All of this stuff. And then all of these are the questions that we're seeking to answer within GoClassics.
I'm going to look at that in a minute, because there's a few features that we're going to just have a quick look at. But Angie, something I was doing, something that Jeff touched on, and it reminded me of a report I was reading that was commissioned by Lexus, and I'm kind of sad like that. I don't know why I was reading a report commissioned by Lexus, but anyway, I was. And one of the things that they were looking at was post-COVID, how is that going to influence people's relationship with cars, obviously? And one of the things they found that even with younger people, there was this desire to reminisce, to look backwards, to look at stuff that had gone before, even stuff that was beyond their own period of time, if you like.
Yeah.
So people looking at the 70s and people looking at the 80s. Do you think that that's something that the magazine can cash in on, where people are starting to think about an era which is kind of vaguely familiar, so probably their dad's cars or stuff like that, but not actually their era?
So are you talking about then a grey area between the modern classics and the actual classics?
Yeah,
Yes.
I suppose I am actually.
Yes. So again, we're touching on about emotional connections and a deep desire to consider a car not just as a metallic box, which youngsters tend to do nowadays. They tend to have two kinds of it was a dichotomy really. One is, the car just is something that takes me from A to B, and in fact, I don't know whether you have noticed, I certainly have. When I was 17, I couldn't wait to turn 18 and get my driving license. Neither of my children seem to be that fussed. My children seem to think when I need one, I will get one.
Yeah.
But it's not really absolutely necessary. However, they will still appreciate a nice car.
Yeah.
Although what we consider nice cars tend to be a little different. Yes, we have arguments in the household. We shouldn't really. My children are called after their names are after Alfa Romeo names. So one is called Romeo and the other one is called Florio Tazio, like Targa Florio.
Unlike your dog.
Oh my God!
Angie, you haven't got one called Anna, have you?
This is Princess Allegra Leyland, because she's beige and therefore she had to have a car name, and most Allegras are beige, whether they move or not. She moves. She works very well.
Oh dear. So you mentioned the Anna there, Jeff, and I noticed there was an article on the Anna in here. I think there it is. It's like, to me, the worst manufacturer collaboration in the history of manufacturer collaborations.
Be careful what you say here, okay?
They got, honestly, it's like, okay, let's take a Japanese design body and pour Italian engineering into that. So hang on, Japanese build reliable cars and Italian build evocative cars. Why didn't you do it the other way around?
Yeah, I agree. But of course, as ever with any venture, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And if it didn't sell, then obviously it didn't catch the wind, and therefore it died. And that's the rule of natural selection in business, and the car business particularly. I mean, look at the number of grand projects that have been out there. I mean, look at the Edsel, for instance. And for our younger listeners and viewers, that's something that was conceived by Henry Ford in memory of his son, Edsel. And it had an unfortunate design because the front of it looked a bit like a lady part. You'll have to look that up and Google it. But effectively, it absolutely killed the thing stone dead. However, now, because they didn't sell too many, they're quite rare and they're very well sought after. So go figure.
May I just really add a comment to that?
Yeah.
When the Alfa Romeo 156 was launched, because of the deep shape of the Scudetto, the shield, I did mention that to one of the journalists at launch, because he asked me, why is it that men find this car so sexy? And I said, well, look at the front. What does it remind you of? And it got published in The Guardian. The Monday after, my managing director came downstairs and sat on my desk, not at my desk, and said, do you have a comment on this? And then he turned to the Guardian page saying, the Alfa Romeo spokeswoman says that the Alfa Romeo front looks like...
Oh my goodness.
Well,
and
I said, well, we got published, didn't we?
Yeah, exactly.
That's my job done.
Yeah.
Job done, exactly. You were in PR at the time and you got it out there, and that's the main thing.
Quite Oscar Wilde.
Yeah, exactly. And more, and stories like that and more can be found in Angie's column in this magazine. I'm sure she's going to be talking about that.
Yes.
But I'll tell you the other.
Go on, Jeff. If you look at my column in this month's issue, it's titled "The Answer's a Lemon," and one of my hats that I wear occasionally is valuing classic cars for insurance companies, and the hard part about that is that the staff, do their best to sort of interpret what they're being asked to insure, but inevitably things fall through through the net, and they end up on my desk, and they say, "What the hell is this car?" And you can see some of the examples there. I shan't.
I did know. I read it last night, and it was really funny. But what I wanted to highlight was the fact that you're talking about your cars and all the cars you've owned, and you've actually published pictures of you at the time.
White trousers.
White flares on there, really good. Oh, I suppose it's better than wearing underpants.
It was good enough for John Travolta in 1977.
Exactly. I'll tell you the other good thing about the mag is that you're not afraid, as we've talked about the Arna that's actually featured in this issue, you're not afraid to have a go at stuff, because you've got Car Court on the back where you have a go at the XJS. You actually particularly have a go at it, and Alan is defending it. I quite like the XJS.
I like the XJS.
And also you've had a go, or I don't know if you had a go, but you've talked about the Aston Martin DBS and the criticism around it and stuff like that as well. So we're not afraid to touch on to have a go at sacred cows and stuff in this mag.
Well, of course, the thing is that you can sit in any bar if you're a drinker, and you can get opinions on absolutely everything. And of course, the internet now is basically the bar online. So everyone's got an opinion, and everyone's right, of course. but the great thing about this mag is that we don't have any sacred cows. We're not going to upset people, by calling their kids ugly or anything like that. But actually, the main thing is that we've got an opinion, and that is just an opinion, and it's perfectly able to be challenged. I mean, one of the things that I particularly like about the concept of the mag is that there's a bit of levity in it. I think the world's grown too serious, and levity is really important to me as a publisher. And obviously, the editorial comes down from the publishing arena, and we have parameters that we want as publishers. And one of the overarching ones, apart from the bite-size aspect and the digestibility of it, is the levity. Let's make it fun. Let's not get too serious here. Let's make this fun. And I think, and in fact, a lot of commentators have made that very comment, that it's fun to read. It makes you smile. Well, that's my mission in life.
Exactly. And Angie, that actually touches on something that you say in the promotional video that we produced to go with this magazine. And you do say, if you're bored with the old magazine and stuffy magazines. So, I mean, magazines, the traditional magazines have been getting a little bit stale, haven't they?
Yes, very, very much so. But I am going to touch upon a very controversial subject now, and that is, although the publisher is here, the link between the magazine content and advertising. I really would like to say something about this, because I can't remember what year it was. I think it was probably 1998. Autocar upset TVR, and TVR boss decided to withdraw all advertising for several months. It really hit Autocar. And it wasn't the first time, but it was the first time that it was publicly said, I am not going to give you my money because you've been unkind to my product. And when I started working in the car industry, the link between content and advertising was very tenuous. So we were allowed, the journalists were allowed to say what they thought. And plenty of times I got upset by what they were saying about Alfa Romeo. Plenty of times, and plenty of arguments.
I should imagine so, yeah.
Over the phone. But I understood and accepted that it was their opinion. They were doing their job, and there wasn't much I could do. Then over the years, things have changed somewhat. And nowadays, everybody is very worried and very scared. this, I'm sure you know, is not just about advertising and magazine content. Most social media, most personal opinions are vetted, because there is either the silence of the silence of the silent majority, or the moaning of the very loud minority, or the other way around. Whatever it is, whatever you say will upset somebody. But when it comes to magazines, that link with advertising is now so strong that people cannot afford to say anything wrong, anything unkind. I'd like to think that this is the one magazine that will allow that to happen.
And something that you touched on there actually touches a chord with me as well, because obviously you've talked about the culture that exists at the moment, and we have this cancel culture environment, don't we, where we all have to be very careful about what we say. But I think particularly, and Jeff will hopefully forgive me for saying this, but particularly some people are prone to fall foul of that because maybe they're not aware of the sensitivities that maybe affect certain communities and people and what have you. Now, I think one of the advantages that we have with GoClassics is that we're quite a diverse team on board, aren't we? So doesn't that give us a unique and a much more broad spectrum insight into how to address these issues, and also how to address the newfound audience that we're reaching out to?
Well, exactly. And also, as you say, Shazad, to make it more inclusive. Because you hear a lot about this word inclusive, but and a lot of the time it's people pay lip service to it and don't do it. But we've done it. We've the way the magazine is set up. We've got a wide range of voices and a diversity of cultures and all sorts of things. So from that point of view, definitely. And to pick up on Angie's point regarding criticisms and what have you. No, I mean, nobody goes out to absolutely demolish somebody else. What we're doing here is, if we make a comment on the something like the XJS, it's just a personal opinion of what you think of that particular model. That's really the start and end point of that. It doesn't go any further than that. As a editorial policy, we have a zero tolerance of abuse, and that's it. So, incidentally, there was something that came up in that made me think, because when we were talking about audiences and for our magazine and for our hobby of classic cars, one thing struck me very vividly a couple of weeks ago. I was at SMMT driving day at Millbrook, and all the manufacturers were there, and they had their wares sitting there. As journos, of course, we could drive whatever we wanted. And, having sort of popped round in a McLaren, which I was incidentally pretty much underwhelmed with, round the Alpine circuit there, which has got a lot of hairpins and reverse cambers, negative cambers, and all sorts of nasties that really upset virtually any car you take round. So some cars were better than others, but anyway, it's flying around with the McLaren around the bends, and of course the marshals are there, and they've all got flags, and they just looked through me when I was driving that McLaren. I went round in the new Morgan +6, and they all gave me a thumbs up, all of them. Now that is a fantastic thing, and it just shows you the value of certain sort of types of mark and certain types of image. And the image of the Morgan is whether you like the car or not, it has a very benevolent image. Nobody can get upset with you when you arrive in a Morgan. You can park in their parking space, and they say, "Oh, have it for the day." You turn up in a BMW or McLaren, and they'll pour paint over you, probably. So from that point of view, it struck me that most of these marshals were quite young. They're in their 20s, and they were all giving the thumbs up. Now, I'm not sure what that says, but I found it an interesting observation. What do you think, Angie?
I think it was because it's unusual. Whilst a McLaren or a Ferrari or Lamborghini, they are splattered all over the pages all the time, and maybe there is too much information about it, and also it's just a sports car. any
I have my
child
own
can do that.
opinions on these supercars and sports cars, which I have documented extensively. And as you both know, I've had the privilege of driving quite a few of these things, having worked extensively in the Middle East. But the problem that I find with them is that they're not accessible to the likes of you and I. Really, they're basically just posemobiles, right? And most people buy these cars, which have tremendous ability, but you need to be like a Walter Roll or somebody like that to be able to drive them, and then you have to have the right place to be able to drive them. The vast majority of the time, you're driving around in cities or, posing in the cars, and you're not really exploiting even a tenth of its ability. It's not accessible. That's one part of it. And the other part of it, like you say, Angie, they're just everywhere. I mean, when we were into supercars, I mean, we talked about, this is the, the 50th year of the anniversary of the Lamborghini Countach, and you talked earlier about poster cars. And I remember as a kid, I mean, there were only a handful of proper supercars, and the Lamborghini Countach was at the pinnacle of that, and if you saw a Countach, that's it. That's it. Your life would be made. You'd see one once and your life would be made. That'd be it. You'd be like, whoa, I saw a Lamborghini Countach. And I was able to say that I drove one at that age, But that's a whole different thing. But nowadays, like especially, again, having lived in Dubai, if you sat at a cafe on Jumeirah Beach Road, you'd see, I once counted 6 Bugatti Veyrons. Sitting there for 1 hour, I counted 6 Bugatti Veyrons. And after a while, I was like, so what?
Well, we are desensitized. It's a little bit like playing computer games. Eventually, you just don't find extreme circumstances that daunting because you are exposed to them one way or another digitally. So you may not drive a McLaren, but if you see that constantly in the media, it is just a sports car. That's
another one of the
we have one of these.
The cornerstones of the magazine, actually.
Yes.
One of the cornerstones here is that we like to look at the whole ownership experience, because with a classic car, unless you're going to rent it, you're going to be driving that more than just 2 days. And a lot of journalists, motoring journalists over the years I've seen, they will criticise small things in the car, which actually upon 2 weeks use, you would know exactly where the switch is and it wouldn't bother you. So making that comment is pernickety from a new car point of view. But with classics, they're even more personal because they're older. You need to make more allowances with that, and they all have their own foibles.
They have foibles, they have character traits, they have personality and stuff like that. And I think that's what we're getting at, is the fact that, and it's not just in regards to classics. Like you say, I mean, you could have a modern car. Well, a Morgan is not necessarily regarded as a modern car, but in fact it is, because it's a brand new car with a modern drivetrain and all the rest of it. Similarly, you have things like Caterhams. Similarly, you have the sort of classics that we're talking about in this mag. And you talk about, there are actually 2 features, not one, but 2 features. I counted them last night, on basically step-by-step how to get into classic cars, how to buy a classic car, how to own one, what you should do. And I like that the first feature in here says there's a 10-point guide on what to do to get into classic cars. And at number 10 is buy a copy of GoClassic. So there you go. I love that.
It should be number 1, Shazza.
Absolutely. But the point is that I think that is the thing about this mag, is that we're bringing to people the sort of cars that are not only accessible, but get you interested, that get you excited, and that will engage you in one way or another.
Yes, engage you physically, properly, not just digitally.
Yeah. Yes. Talking of digital, so we have mentioned a number of times that we are trying to broaden the readership of this magazine and invite younger, a more widespread clientele, both diverse-wise and age-wise. What are the plans, and I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask you anyway, Jeff, what are the plans to take this magazine into the digital realm?
Well, as you probably know, even at launch, we have a digital offering. So you can go onto the website and just click through and buy it, download it to your tablet or your phone, or you can go into the App Store or the Play Store, Apple or Google Play, and you can get it there. So there are very many ways you can get a digital offering. However, if you prefer to sort of get your information from video, we have a YouTube channel, GoClassics, and that has we're just getting the thing going, but already it's got a wealth of interesting articles. In fact, some of them are some of them have you in them, Sheldon, apparently.
Yes, that's what I've been tasked with, right? To get the YouTube channel up to speed and to get the social media channel up to speed. What sort of stuff are we going to start to see on the social media channels, Angie?
I would like to see a channel that allows a two-way communication with our potential and existing audience. I would like to see bite-sized, pithy, not statements, but posts that reach out, but allow people to come back to you and deliver an opinion on it and maybe have a discussion. And this magazine, in my view, is just one part of a two-way communication process.
I think that's absolutely fascinating. So, Jeff, we're talking about making a magazine that actually engages with its community.
Yes, and that's paramount in the 21st century, because the way that content is consumed now is completely different to the way it was consumed even 10 years ago. And that's only going to get, it's going to go exponential, because as technology improves, it will be so much easier to consume it on the go. So whilst we still have obviously a printed mag, because a lot of people do like sitting on the toilet reading their mag, or wherever they choose to read it, but in a physical sense, but there's a burgeoning demand, particularly amongst our younger audience, for a digital offering. So we've got digital, as I say, and with our YouTube channel that's really starting to get motoring, there will be, and of course with that, there's the ability to communicate both ways. In fact, I was checking it out yesterday, and a few comments were on there regarding it's good to see that you're attacking the lower echelons of cars that people can actually go out and buy, rather than a £650,000 Aston Martin DB5. Because, and I agree, because there are magazines out there for that. If that's your bag, then you'll buy a different magazine. But with us, really, we're looking at probably a ceiling of about 75,000. And okay, before you start, the E-Type obviously can cost more than that, but because it's the 60th anniversary, we wanted to run the feature because of that. But most of the cars you'll see, you'll be able to dip into below that threshold, and that's really quite important. And remember that our median audience, some of them are coming up to retirement, and with the way that pensions are configured these days, you can dip into your pot. So if you've got a £250,000 pension pot and you fancy having one last fling before you shuffle off your mortal coil, you might dip in for 50,000 and just buy something nice. That happens an awful lot, more than you might imagine.
Yeah, on that morbid note, I'll move to something a little bit younger. But, it's very interesting what you say. First of all, by the way, with the E-Type, there is a video also on the GoClassics YouTube channel, which I filmed over at the weekend at Silverstone Classic, and it was about the Silverstone auctions. And I did follow up. They did sell an E-Type. I believe it went for £35,000, so actually well within the range that we're talking about. One of my favorite features in the mag, and one that I'm going to read very, very carefully, is actually this one, which is something that maybe people wouldn't have imagined seeing in here. And this is actually my favorite generation of the Toyota MR2. I think this was the best resolved of all of them. And this is a car that's accessible in the market at the moment for $3,000 or less. And here there's a buying guide actually on the car itself. So that's definitely one of my favorite features in this issue. Angie, what's your favorite feature in this issue?
I am looking at Toyota MR2 now.
Oh, right.
Yes.
But in terms of the magazine, what was your favorite feature in it?
Mine.
Yeah. You're on. Oh, okay. That's fair enough.
I like that. Actually, interesting point though, Shazam, regarding that MR2 feature, because effectively they have now come down to as cheap as chips levels. But I bought one brand new in 2001, and it was black with the red cloth interior, and I absolutely loved it. It was so impractical because you couldn't even get a shopping bag in it because there wasn't enough room behind the engine, and in the front there's a spare wheel. It was just
There's a little compartment behind the seats, isn't there?
yeah, but it's not. It's no good at all. I mean, it's so impractical. But having said that, once you're in it and you were buzzing, I mean, that would just take bends and corners and roundabouts. I mean, I'd go around roundabouts 2 or 3 times just because I could, and it was huge fun. However, I was out near Peterborough one day, and I think I'd covered about 3,000 miles in it by that point. And I got a bit too cocky on the brow of this hill, and the road went off to the right, and I went off to the left, and it hit an Armco barrier, and the thing was written off completely. And I got out of it. The airbags went off. I got out of it, and I just walked away. And I thought, this is the way things are going. I mean, if this was the only other thing I've ever crashed, I hate to say, is it's also a 2-seater. It was a Jensen Healey. And luckily, I walked away from that, although it only hit a tree. But the thing is that the 2 cars are worlds apart in terms of safety and active and passive safety. And I'm now running a Porsche Boxster GTS, which you could put these 2 cars next to each other and say, oh, there's a comparison. Well, there is different as chalk and cheese, actually. It's only the configuration in the mid-engine that's pretty much similar. But when you come down to it, I would put money on the fact you could spend $3,000 on a good MR2 or 60 grand on a good Boxster GTS, and you would probably have as much fun in the MR2. So that's really where we're sitting, because you don't have to spend big money to enjoy yourself.
And talking of that sort of stuff and the image and the impression that you have, or the cachet that you have, people would think, okay, the Porsche, you have cachet with that car. But actually, if you have the MR2, it's a kind of more friendlier, more accessible car in terms of how people perceive you, right? Because people don't think that, oh man, look at him, he's showing off in his Porsche. They just think, oh, that's a fun little thing. What's that then?
Well, I'm big into this, you see. I'm a lifelong studier of image, because, and I think Angie as a PR will get this, everything has an image. It may be completely different to the reality. It could be people or cars, whatever. The image is what people see, and that's what they perceive as real, unless they really dig down. And the image is to me is fascinating, because I've had virtually every sort of car going, and if you're the worst ones are the hot BMWs, the M3s and that. Certain parts of the community quite like them, but most people think they're arrogant and they hate you. They don't let you out of junctions. Similarly with a full fat Range Rover, they don't let you out of junctions. Although when I bought an Aston Martin DB9, you'd think, oh, everyone's going to hate me with this, but they didn't. Again, it's the image. It's that gentleman Bond image. And that is, to me, is fascinating. It's a bit like that Morgan going around the hard-bitten journos and everyone giving you a thumbs up. So that is, to me, image is an important point thing to bear in mind when you're buying something. I mean, for instance, yesterday I've got a BMW, a 1989 7 Series, and my dad bought it new. And in 1989, and when he died, he left it to me, and I've had it for the last 20 years, and it's only done 54,000 miles, and I took it to have a bit of rectification work done. It's throwing up a bit of a gearbox fault, I think, in the software, but I took it in. I drove it about 12 miles yesterday to get it sorted. And it virtually stopped traffic. People were coming alongside and looking down and, wow, giving me the thumbs up. Yeah. And you think, wow, and so that was a car when it was new. Everyone hated you with that. I do remember.
It's how the perception of cars change over time, I think. And I think that's certainly one aspect of what we're doing with the magazine. And Angie, is that an important part of the kind of cars that we feature? Is that feel-good aspect of the car?
But what makes you feel good? Is it the car or is it you? because
and also externally, right? Because it's the car, it's you, but it's also how people perceive you, right?
exactly, and that's what I was trying to say in my column. Women's perception of cars may be different because do they really want to know what's inside and underneath it? I'm going to get controversial here because I know that most of the female journalists, certainly for the last 10 years or probably longer, have had to work really hard to be as good as or better than their male counterparts. And that has meant that they needed to know as much, if not more. I remember when I was launching the Alpha 156, it was international launch, and the night before I excused myself, and my then boss said, "Where are you going?" And I said, "Well, I want to do some homework about the front suspension of the 156 because it was brand new at the time." And he laughed and said, "Why?" And I said, "Because during the launch they might ask me, and I don't want to say, oh, I don't know, because I'm a girl." And he said, "Tomorrow the only thing they will ask you is where to go on holiday in Italy." And he was right. He was absolutely right. Absolutely nobody asked me about the front suspension, but they all said, "Oh, you come from Sicily. Where should I go on holiday?" So the perception was about a very beautiful car that handles and drives very well. You don't need to know why it handles well, especially if it's a classic car. It doesn't even have to handle well, but it has to make you feel good.
Well, I hear Etna is pretty good this time of year.
Also, I will just touch on the point quickly that I think that the type of people that attend these launches and stuff is changing dramatically, and I think that era of I once attended a launch with the legendary LJK Setright.
Oh yes,
and he was an absolute powerhouse of an intellect that was actually quite intimidating to be in the presence of,
Yes.
But I think that we are in a very different era now where I don't think we have that level of...
No, they don't ask that sort of question. They ask, where is the rear door handle?
Yeah, exactly. Or where can I put my cup, So anyway, we're going to wrap up this first episode of our podcast, and hopefully we're going to make this a regular thing on the channel. So look out for this. Make sure you've hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit that notification on button so that you don't miss any of these videos and the other videos that we're going to be uploading onto this channel. Make sure you're subscribing to GoClassics. Before we sign off and do, like I said, make sure that you are subscribing because there will be more episodes, and we are hoping to have some guests on these shows as well going forward. So it's all going to be very exciting and interesting. Well, before we sign off, from both of you guys, what's the future for GoClassics? I know that this is the first day. I know we've just the 5th of August. It's just gone on sale. I know it's very early, but thinking ahead, a year from now, 5 years from now, what do you reckon the future for GoClassics?
I'd like it to be a platform that people can not just read, but communicate with. As I said before, a two-way communication thing rather than just being talked at.
Love it. Jeff?
Yeah, well, we're looking to make this as a broad church as possible. And you can see when you're looking at the video that, I love my Smarts. And in fact, they're great little cars. Don't laugh because, once you've had one, you would be addicted. And, these are the sort of things that we're putting in. I mean, the first Smart is now 20 years old. And so therefore it definitely qualifies as an old classic, and yet you still think of those as modern. So we're just going to roll more of that out, and as Angie says, and I quite agree with her, we listen to what people want, and we'll give them what they want. There's no point just feeding them what we want to do. One journalist to another. That's rubbish. Yeah. We want to do exactly what the reader wants, and that's our ethos.
So when we say this is your magazine, we literally mean this is your magazine.
Yes,
awesome. That is the perfect note upon which to end this inaugural podcast for GoClassics. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. And like I said, stay tuned because there's a lot more to come.
So you want something sleek and glamorous, and then check out the Jaguar E-Type featured in our launch issue, alongside many other features such as
buying guides, owner's tips, and even how to buy your own first classic car.
GoClassics is about the cars that you relate to, the cars that you've dreamed of, and the cars that you can own, run, and enjoy. At GoClassics, we'll tell you how.
GoClassics is the most exciting car magazine on the shelves today, and it's out now. And you can get one by heading over to goclassics.co.uk, where you can find some of our fantastic limited time subscription offers.
Forget about the boring, the pompous, the self-important. If you want something new,
GoClassics!